Okay, I am really fortunate to have an early employee of Koala Mattress, Tim Doyle, on the channel today. He helped Koala Mattress go from $500,000 a month
to $9 million a month.
He is now the co-founder of Eucalyptus, who is funded by Blackbird Ventures. And the whole premise behind Eucalyptus is to build and run digital healthcare companies. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Tim as an elite operator. In my conversation with Tim, I'm trying to really understand what are the things that make a great consumer company so that we could leverage those insights and see if we can find public companies with similar traits. I've left links in the description box below if you want to find out more about Eucalyptus, and they are hiring as well. As usual, this video is not financial advice or recommendation for you to do anything. It's just general information for entertainment purposes. And no, I'm not sponsored to make this video. Tim is just incredibly gracious to spend some time to talk to me. So without further ado, let's go. You've got some crazy stories. Instead of me doing the intro, I was hoping that you could tell me a little bit more about what you did before Eucalyptus and then what you're trying to do with Eucalyptus.
Yeah, sure. So I guess, well, where do you start? So I was in consulting, working for a small digital consulting company. My first kind of like significant career thing when I worked on the Labour Party's election campaign in 2016. So bought all of the digital media for them across Facebook, Google, like kind of search, and then also the YouTube stuff. So really interesting time.
There was YouTube stuff already back then?
Yeah, there wasn't much. It was just like kind of like pretty, it was actually a lot of non-skippable stuff. The YouTube inventory that was really interesting back then was all of the, like how available 30-second non-skippable was. Obviously that's long gone now, but it was pretty good inventory at the time. So like really interesting time in 2016 because you had Australian election, you also had Brexit, you also had the Trump election, all of which were significantly impacted by digital advertising and more primarily Facebook. So having the opportunity to kind of luck into doing a whole lot of Facebook ads back then was pretty cool. And then also luckily at the time was working with Danny, who's one of the co-founders of Koala. He started Koala. I helped him organize the original fundraising from one of my school friends, or not school friends, but friends I was with, guys I was friends with as a kid. Then went on to join the business, I think at employee number 6 or 7. Ran strategy for the first year, then marketing for the next 18 months, and like built the kind of reasonably large in-house marketing team, and kind of saw the business go from I think like $550K a month to like $8 or $9 million a month over the course of 2 years. So pretty wild growth.
Your billboards are the best.
Yeah.
Your billboards are the best.
Yeah, Charlie's billboards, but yeah, I was definitely there.
With Koala, you worked up to essentially $100 million over a span. I think, was it 3 years?
I was actually just like 2.5.
2.5?
Yeah.
And now you work on Eucalyptus. So tell me a little bit more about like what you're trying to do with Yuka.
So I mean, we are trying to be a direct-to-consumer house of brands in healthcare. So we kind of looking at the world of e-commerce, looking at how you have a whole lot of brands built off infrastructure, primarily Shopify, and then we're looking at how that applies in a kind of changing digital commerce landscape, and it's primarily healthcare and how that's evolving. So we're kind of looking at what that platform looks like, what the brands look like, how you build experiences that are differentiated across a whole lot of demographics and specifics of healthcare, and how you can kind of scale that across the country and then potentially across the world as well.
How do you build an experience that becomes like an economic moat, if you will?
I think like you're looking for some form of long form differentiation that's value creating. So you're kind of looking at the core experience now. So you're going like, okay, people go to the doctor, that's like largely an in-person experience. Then they go to the pharmacy, another in-person experience. The friction that exists there is like time spent both in consult, in booking, in waiting, and then also kind of in transit between those two things. And then also like the time that it's like open and the days off work and things like that. So you go, can we solve for that using technology? If you can solve for it using technology, you go, well, can we make those experiences A, easier, but B, better? And then if you're able to do that, and then you can kind of charge some premium for the convenience that you're providing, then you have some system for developing a mode over time.
So as you scale the solution, would I'm sure that people will take notice and people will copy you, like people already did. How do you, I guess, how do you defend them from copying? There will always be copying, there will always
For
be
sure.
some kind of copycats. So how do you kind of defend them away from like creating such a unique experience that even if they were to copy it, it will never be the same?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the mattress game, right? Like, let's talk about that one, just because, like, I know the
Yeah. Okay.
that's in
I
our
feel you. I
current
feel you. I feel you. I
environment a
feel
little
you.
bit,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sensitive, perhaps. But it's you have a lot of like, basically, you got to like look at where the value is and how you can create value that's difficult to replicate. And I think like if you look at the mattress industry, a lot of the mattresses are very similar. Like the products are very similar in the bed in a box world, and yet some of those businesses have done really well,
Yeah.
and some of them have kind of fallen by the wayside quite quickly. And I think what the successful ones were able to do was like find a source of differentiation that was difficult to replicate, and invest in the continued improvement of that source of differentiation. So if you look at Koala, it's like not necessarily a mattress company anymore. It's kind of more of a convenience furniture business. And so what they did is they continued to invest in technology that made it easier to get furniture to your house quickly and reliably and assembled quickly throughout over a period of years. So like instead of being like, we will continue to iterate on this mattress, they've gone, well, we're going to iterate on the experience and build defensibility there. So a lot of people come in and copy the mattress. They can't copy the 4-hour delivery experience. They can't copy the assembly. They can't copy the experience of getting the delivery and getting the assembly and the cost and the customer service that comes along with that. So there's a technology layer that is a moat as opposed to a product layer. I think you got to find kind of like figure out where that is and invest in the right way into it.
Yeah. So on that topic, on the topic of Koala Mattress, one of the things I wanted to ask you is you've helped the company go from 500,000 to 100 million a year. Looking back, was there some kind of key ingredients that's like within that company that made it really successful? And what were some of the things that you took to your new ventures?
So like, what are the secrets to success? I think like,
maybe not secrets, like the things that really helped you accelerate towards that.
I think like it's like this awareness of context that is really interesting to me, right? Like, so like the internet is kind of moving in waves, and you see these like breakthrough moments of innovation. And I think like early e-com was defined by the ability to move large amounts of inventory online. So you have like the Amazon model, really successful, obviously, but took the physical retail experience and just goes, okay, this is going to be online. And therefore you can buy it from anywhere and, have unlimited access to inventory. Then you have this second generation internet piece, which is like, okay, but unlimited inventory doesn't create a good customer experience in a lot of cases. And mattresses are a good example of that. You have like the situation where if you saw a website with 50 mattresses, it'd be a very difficult buying experience because you have no mechanism of testing them. So you have this like direct to consumer, vertically integrated business model where people are innovating on the buying experience rather than the product itself.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Right?
Yep.
And so what I think the secret to Koala was at some level was the ability to understand that and continue to iterate on that buying experience in a way that was like way ahead of competition and invest in the technology team. Like, it'd probably be unheard of for a mattress company, to have a large technology team 10 to 15 years ago. So Koala jumps on that, does that investment really well, makes a really differentiated customer experience. And then at the same time sees what's happening in terms of changes in the way that the marketing world is working, both from like a shift from agency to in-house and a shift from offline channels into digital channels. And you have this situation where they're able to like take the ability to differentiate an experience and the ability to differentiate on the messaging of that experience and build a company that's like truly differentiated and really fast growing.
On the topic of in-house creatives, moving from agency to in-house, what are some of the brands that, at least in Australia, that that when you saw their content, you're like, oh shit, that's really good?
Yeah, I mean, there are we're starting
not yourself,
to see,
none of your brands.
Yeah. I'm not going to claim everyone. No, definitely not claiming that. But I think like we're starting to see some of the really successful early e-com stories from Australia hit, public awareness at a level. This year has been an incredible year for Quadlock with their acquisition, for Adore Beauty with their listing, for Who Gives a Crap with like the explosion of growth through the pandemic. I think like Who Gives a Crap is probably the greatest e-commerce success story in like our generation of brands. And I think when people start to see what they've achieved across 3 continents over 5 years, is like an incredible story. So they're definitely one that I've looked at throughout my professional life, thinking like these guys have really nailed it.
Yeah. So investing in technology, differentiating on both investing in technology, differentiating with product experience and customer experience. Are those some of the key things that you took away from Koala and now have applied to the ventures that you're working on now?
Yeah. I mean, I think like the mental model that represents, right, which is like, how do we take high friction customer experiences, use technology or supply chain or product differentiation to reinvent those experiences? How do we build like kind of platform layers that are capable of replicating that? And then how do we grow those experiences using creative and media buying capacity in-house?
Okay. You actually answered multiple questions that I had. I was gonna ask about the systems. Well, actually, on that topic of investing in technology, how have you think about hiring for the new ventures? Because for Eucalyptus, you have multiple brands, right?
Mhm.
How do you tackle that to make sure that you're not losing your flavor, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I have like a really deliberate philosophy around kind of talent identification and kind of recruitment generally, where I think like what's really important is, can you get people like on the upswing of their career trajectory? So can you like essentially, like people become professionals and then grow really quickly over like the first 5 to 7 years of their career. A lot of that first period will be training, and then the period after training is like the opportunity for them to come in and start like to solve their first generation of problems for themselves, right? So like you learn how things work, and then the next thing you really want to do is like take on those challenges for yourself and like define how you will solve problems and how you will make a difference in the business world. And I think like our ability to attract, incentivize, and retain that group of people that are trying to like figure out how to solve big problems in the business world within Eucalyptus is kind of key to us succeeding in the long term. And like we've been reasonably good at it so far, but the ability to keep doing it over 5 to 10 years is going to be what makes or breaks this company.
How do you know if when you first meet someone, like what do you?
But I think like what I'm trying to do in early assessment of people is I'm looking for like first principles problem solving ability that like they're able to analyze situations and provide solutions that are like, even if they're not correct, they're at least like interesting or differentiated. Like, yeah, to do that, if people can do that and like kind of come at problems from interesting perspectives, that's what I really like value and look for when recruiting.
What do you think are some of the failures or at least the learning opportunities so far when it comes to talent?
I think like a lot of people, and I think historically this has been true, is like people over optimize for technical qualifications in a lot of positions. I think like the university in this system in this country has like done a poor job of technical training and sets up a reward infrastructure that like we're pumping out too many lawyers, we're pumping out too many commerce graduates, with generic skill sets. And so sifting through what is like a deep pool of people with law or finance degrees to find those that are capable of like interesting work, and kind of disqualifying the fact that like it's not necessary, disqualifying pedigree in order to like find people that are like, I guess, maybe from unconventional backgrounds, but are capable of like bringing really exciting things to the workspace is a real challenge. And I think like that's where we have had to really think about how we design systems to encourage that and bring the best people in.
How do you transition them over? Because then like if they're coming from banking, law, I assume, or at least I can make some educated observations that they play safe, but you don't play safe at least in your space.
I mean, like you just give them the space to, I mean, like I'm a big believer in like giving people a problem to solve and then giving them the space to fail, and then helping them kind of restructure thinking around when things go well and don't go well. So like it's definitely not like a high touch model. It's like bring them in, trust them, allow them to shape their thinking in the way that they think is best, and then like course correct when things go wrong.
Okay. I just want to circle back to the talent bit just a little bit more. For someone to get a face-to-face with any of the Eucalyptus brands, what exactly are you looking for? Whether that's on LinkedIn or like, I know you talked about first principles problem solving, but how do you judge that on, well, sorry, judge is not the right word, but like, how do you filter for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, right? I definitely don't think we have a good system I think like nobody has a really great system for like first filter pieces. And I think you need an element of luck there, right? If like,
Okay.
300 people are applying for a job and you're only ever going to interview 30 to 50 of them, like attempting to remove your biases and have a system which brings some level of clarity to that process is really difficult. And so I think like we screen for like interesting perspectives. So like I find like generic cover letters to be like terrible. I mean, in the most part, like I find people that like go to the effort to present some form of insight as to why they're interested in the brand or the company or some piece of thinking about the way that we operate. And when people do that, that's a really like an attention grabbing moment. And then like in terms of CV screening, I mean, it's difficult, right? A lot of people have a lot of really good qualifications. And so I think we get more wrong than we get right in that process. But, we're hoping to get better at pattern recognition as we go on.
Yeah. So as part of building a multi-brand business, I think you talked about you want to become the P&G and Unilever for Australia. At some point, you can't do everything yourself, right? And seeing your structure on LinkedIn, it seems like you have general managers for different brands. Right? How do you're almost essentially betting on founders now. So how do you, just expanding on the talent question a little bit more, how do you essentially think through that, like out of these 5 people, I think this one have the highest probability of success?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, right? Like I think part of what we're trying to do here is like limit the size of that bet to some extent. So like, I think by providing, like having really strong functional heads around them. So, great heads of technology, great heads of product, great heads of marketing, et cetera, et cetera. I think like the bet on the general manager is not as binary as like, are they going to be a great founder or are they not? It's like, can they succeed in our system? And I think like, if the energy and the momentum is there, then like the system that we built hopefully rewards that and doesn't necessarily need them to be, like Steve Jobs from day one, like they can kind of learn in the system and let the system kind of help them develop their skill sets. And then hopefully like they become more independent over time and we can expect them to get better and like deliver, really high level results as they kind of pick up new skills and pick up more kind of insight over time.
Moving on to expanding on the topic of going for multiple verticals or multiple kind of different industries or brands. I think one of the interesting questions I wanted to ask you is how do you prioritize those markets to chase after? Because with your system, you can almost go after majority of the market that you will like in the consumer space, but you have to pick, right? So how do you think about picking that without giving away the recipe?
I think if you'd asked me this a little while ago, I would have been much more like market size focused. I think like you're looking for big markets what you're looking for, I think historically what we would have looked for is like markets that had significant amounts of like share of wallet for people. So like capturable revenue from someone over the course of a year or 2 years is significant enough to invest in technology and marketing to capture that. And I think maybe now I'm less wed to that and I'm more wed to like high friction problems to solve where we can build trust with the customer and then potentially a relationship over time. So I'm looking for like multi-year relationships where we can grow value with the customer by building things that like change the way they interact with the category. And so I care more about that initial point of friction than I have historically, and I care less about the size of the market, I guess.
So sizing is not as not as important to you now compared to friction.
I just think you just like kind of get market size looks after itself because there's so many adjacencies to where you are now. So I think like, if you're looking at Pilot and Kin, they're obviously relatively limited businesses at the moment, and they're probably not, $100 million plus opportunities in their own right. But by earning, the trust of young men or young women in the healthcare system, you can do a lot of things with that, right? So there's a lot of opportunity to build adjacencies and cross sells into, new things, whether it be like skincare brands like we have or, mental health or whatever it might be down the line.
That's a big one. I think you're tackling that one sometime.
Yeah, we tackled it with a lightweight version of it. I think there's some room to go there.
Okay, cool. I guess the thinking really is almost like a Uber model where they tackle transportation first and then they kind of find adjacent.
Yeah,
Is that the
I mean,
right
I
way
think
to think about it?
they're leveraging a different thing. They're leveraging like the fact that they have so much liquidity and movement of objects through the drivers, and so they're like, how do we monetize this user base more? I think like,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, there's elements of it for sure. I don't know if I don't know if it's as attractive space as theirs, but there's something there.
Okay. And how do you, this might be expanding on that question, how do you know which to ignore? Because then would there be smoke and mirrors between kind of maybe a certain vertical could be really high friction, but then maybe there isn't exactly the commercial value there?
Yeah, you definitely need to like apply some level of like kind of market size modeling at some level to go like, okay, if I can solve this initial point of friction for people, where can I take this? And I think you have to kind of extrapolate out, you need to see, I'm still keen on this path to $100 million of revenue a year in the category, even if I have to go through multiple steps to get there. So, like if you're in healthcare, like you can obviously step through various parts of healthcare. If you're in pet, you can step through various parts of pet. I think if you're selling stationery online, it's probably difficult to see how at a unit economics level you ever get to the point where you're owning enough share of wallet to be meaningfully sizable business.
So if we had to boil down everything to, I guess, the fundamentals that make a great growth company, can you almost kind of put them down as dot points that having these ingredients, you have a higher probability of success? You might not have a recipe for success, but like a higher probability of success.
Yeah, I think like I'm looking for like in growth companies, like if I'm looking at the public markets and I'm looking at growth companies, I'm looking for like where is the kind of key source of differentiation and how defensible is that source of differentiation? So like obviously like marketplaces with network effects have huge defensibility because they're very hard to replicate. I think then you have other types of like kind of marketplace models where they're just essentially like online retailer type vibes. And I don't know if that's necessarily as strong. And then, so you're looking for initially core source of differentiation and the defensibility of that core source of differentiation. Then you're looking for execution beyond that. So I think like, has the company had a track record of executing on a roadmap that is like attractive and innovative? And then I think you're looking for leadership beyond that and like who's running the company and how confident are you that they are able to continue to deliver over, a 5 to 10 year timeline.
So let's wrap up our conversation with a lightning round. What are some of the best pieces of content that you consumed so far this year, at least?
What have I been reading this year? I read Scott Belsky's The Messy Middle. I loved it.
Oh, that one's good. Yeah.
I recommend that book a lot. I think my favorite business book ever is Creativity Inc. About Pixar. The Outsiders. Sorry, it's called The Outsiders. It's by, I'm in it now. 8 unconventional CEOs and their radically rational blueprint for success. So that's actually like, if you're like, I know that your audience is like more interested in probably the investment side of things than the company building side of things. That actually is a remarkable book about capital allocation. And capital allocation is one of the hardest challenges of being an effective CEO. And I think if you can use capital allocation as a lens through which you assess companies, public or not, you will go a long way to be successful. So that's probably the best book I've read on that topic ever. Is
your plan to stay private forever? Or you can't tell me?
I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, it's not a question that's like, when you're 18 months in and you're, at a reasonably early point from a revenue perspective, you don't really need to project that far into the future. You're just like, you're projecting into the next fundraising round, basically.
but shout out to, you guys have done such great work. It's awesome to watch just from the outside.
Thank you.
A few more lightning round questions. Public company that you have, that you're watching right now, that you're rooting to win, if you have one.
Yeah, is Twilio public? I think it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible company.
Yeah.
I like this, the segment purchase. I love.
Oh yeah, that was great. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, I think in Australia, who do I like? I mean, I'd love to see Adore Beauty do well, just because it's a great Australian e-commerce story. I think the more of them we have, the better we'll be. So I think I think seeing some of these companies come to market over the next few years that are from our generation of startups, I think like YouFoods filed recently. I think Booktopia has filed recently.
Yeah.
So I think the next year we'll see a lot of these businesses that are, my generation of e-commerce businesses start to hit public markets, and I really hope for them to do well.
Okay, fair enough. 2 people that you think that I should have on the channel next that will bring some really good insights on growth companies, whether public or
I think if you can get any of the great like Australian growth companies, to come in and chat about how they've approached things, it'd be, awesome. So I think like any of the things, like we've seen a lot of like, kind of unicorns booked recently in the sense of like, we've got Canva killing it. I think like what's really cool about Canva is like, if you can get the tier, like the second tier leadership of that business is really awesome. So like people like, I think like often the stories get told are like very founder centric, and there's really great people all through these companies who've played instrumental roles in growing them.
Yeah.
I think like the Airtasker growth story is a really good one. There's some great people there. Culture Amp and Safety Culture, obviously amazing stories in the e-commerce space, the Who Gives a Crap guys, and then the Adore crew, and all of those teams would be awesome. So like anyone you can get from any of those kind of high growth
man, that's a long list to go after.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And as always, I always learn so much from you just having a chat with you. So I always appreciate it. But how do people find, what you're trying to do, or like if people are interested in any of the Eucalyptus brands?
Yeah, I mean, we've got pilot.com.au for men's health. We've got skin.software for skincare. We've got kinfertility.com.au for contraception and fertility management.
I'll leave the link in the description for all of that.
Yeah, great. And then eucalyptus.vc if you're interested in working with us, or you can hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter. Probably Twitter's probably the best, actually. I'm most responsive there.
Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. If you have learned something new, consider gently smacking that like button right there. Subscribe to my channel so that when I release future videos, you'll be the first one to know. Until next time, my name is David. Otto will always do the honors, and see you very, very soon.